Outside, waiting for the show here. It's 4:30. First is going to be snake show, then gator show, crocodile, gators, whoever else wants to join, and then they have some bird show. Oh, this is outside, but huge. Waiting for a snake show. Just a moment. It's a little bit different than it was before they didn't have that glass.
It's good to see you guys out here. Welcome to Reptile Gardens. Welcome to the Snake Show. My name's Kyle. I'll be doing the show for you guys here today. Before we really get started, we do like to get to know you guys just a little bit better. So, how many of you really like snakes? That's a good number. Not a lot. Okay. How many of you absolutely hate and are absolutely terrified of snakes? And you guys are going to keep those hands up for a second. You see, right now I'm getting a head count. This is actually how I find my volunteers for the day. We'll get to that just a little bit later. But we're going to jump right in. The first snake that I have for you guys is of the harmless variety. He is known as a yellow-tailed crebo. Now we're going to find him Central and South America. He is non-venomous. In fact, we do often compare him to a garter snake. But we'll get to why that is in just a minute or so. First, for people that are unfamiliar with snakes, when they see one, they're often going to refer to him with words like cold, wet, or slimy. But like all reptiles, he is cold-blooded. Basically all that means, though, is that he is the same temperature as his surrounding, so he's rarely, if ever, going to be cold. Now, for being wet or slimy, he really doesn't have a reason to be, so he's not. We do have some snakes. This is a good example of it. The scales are kind of shiny, kind of reflective. From a distance in the right light, they may actually have the appearance of being wet or slimy, but then we do have other snakes, even as we go throughout today's show. You can tell just by looking at them. They're very rough and abrasive to the touch. You might also notice every once in a while that he is going to stick out that forked tongue. Does anybody know why he does that? Yeah? Exactly. He's finding which kid he's going to eat next. So actually, when he sticks out that forked tongue, it's his sense of smell. He sticks out that tongue, he's actually grabbing air particles. He's going to bring them back into a special organ on the top of his jaw. It's known as the Jacobson's organ. Now, really, the sense of smell is the most important sense to a snake. He will use it over any other, especially when it comes to identifying his food. Now, started out by telling you guys we do often compare him to a garter snake because, like one, he doesn't have the ability to kill his prey before he eats it. Instead, what we're going to see him do is strike and then bite onto an animal. He's just then going to start to swallow it. Now, because of that, a lot of his meals are going to be very fresh, but there's a couple of drawbacks with it as well. A lot of the animals that he eats are more than likely going to object to being eaten. And it's going to be quite a violent objection. These animals, they are going to try to fight back, and it can lead to injuries to these snakes. So other snakes, actually the vast majority of them, just simply find it much more convenient to kill whatever they intend to eat before eating it. Now that really is going to be our primary focus for today's show. We're going to take a look at 2 different ways that snakes kill their prey, starting out with the constrictors. Now normally when people do think about constrictors, they're thinking about the giant snakes in the world. And actually, you would be correct in assuming that, to an extent. Because the 2 largest snakes will both use constriction. The first of those is the green anaconda out of South America. They can actually grow anywhere between 23 and 25 feet, and they can weigh well in excess of 300 pounds. The other true giant is actually the snake that I have for you guys right here. This is a reticulated python. We're going to find them throughout southeastern Asia, and they can actually grow anywhere between 25 and 30 feet in length. Now obviously this guy is a little bit off of that number so far. He's only about 3 years old, but we can see in those first 3 years he has started to grow quite quick. This same rate of growth will continue for the next couple of years as well. Now he will use that constriction to kill his prey. The first thing we're going to see him have to do though is strike and then bite onto it. Now his teeth are sharp and they're all curved to the back of his mouth. It's like a mouth full of fish hooks. Once he bites on, the animal's not getting away. Now the snake's going to make doubly sure of that a split second later by then wrapping his entire body, his coils around it. And then from there we do see the actual squeezing begin. Every time the animal exhales or lets out a little bit of air, the snake is going to tighten those coils. Now the animal's then going to exhale again. The snake will then tighten even more. And it's a process. It's going to keep on going just like this until the animal runs out of oxygen. They inevitably die of suffocation. Now we do have some people with larger species of snake. They assume this constriction process is somewhat of a bone-crushing force. Flattening those bones, making it easy for him to swallow, but it's pretty much the exact opposite. The body of the prey will remain fully intact. Now there are some times you may see some smaller injuries, things like a cracked rib or a broken bone, but really it's all about that lack of oxygen. Now the next step in the process is for him to go ahead and actually eat it. As you already may know about snakes though, they swallow their food whole. Now it's not the limitation that it would be for you or I, because like all snakes, he doesn't actually have a chin. So his 2 lower jaw bones are not connected. The only limitation to how large of an animal he can eat is how far that skin will stretch. Like all snakes, he does have rather elastic skin. Means that he can actually eat something that is 2 to 3 times his original diameter. Do you guys have any questions about the reticulated python? Right there? So could a python eat an alligator? He could probably try. Really kind of tricky because you're not going to see them living in the same area a lot of the time. One of those places now is in Florida with some of those pythons that are down there. They definitely have eaten alligators before. Yep. Right there? What's that? Am I gonna feed it? Not if I do my job right. Oh wait, did you have a question up there? How old can they get? That's a good question as well. Right at about 20 to 25 years actually. Alright, so constriction's not just limited to larger species of snake like this. In fact, we do see it in right at about 50% of all snakes. That's going to include the bull snake, also known as the gopher snake, that we have here in South Dakota. Now, constriction, it's not the end-all, most convenient way for snakes to kill their prey. And the reason for that is you do still see some of that prolonged contact that, of course, can still lead to some injuries. So other snakes, they find that it's even more convenient to kill whatever they intend to eat through the use of venom. In the world, we have 3 different groups of venomous snakes, and we will be taking a close look at each and every one of them, but we're going to start out with what we consider to have the most primitive use of their venom, which are the rear fang snakes. Now, rear fang snakes, they do have these enlarged teeth that are located near the back of their mouths. They have grooves or channels that are built into them. Now, this particular snake is a mangrove snake. We're going to find them throughout Central and Southern Asia. I hate my job. They're primarily a tree-dwelling snake, so a lot of what he's going to eat are going to be things like birds, small mammals, and then also some small reptiles. He is in fact venomous. Yeah, go that way. It's a good idea. He is in fact venomous. He does belong to that first group. Like all rear fang snakes, he does not have the true ability to inject his prey with venom. Instead, what he has to do is strike, bite onto the animal, and then just work it to the back of its mouth where those teeth are located. The venom is then going to run from that venom gland through the channel in the teeth and then finally into the wound. It's going to take a little bit of time. Some of these guys, they have more of a mild venom as well. You know, they want to make sure their food's not getting it away. We'll see some of these guys with more of that mild venom use constriction as a secondary method to kill that prey. Now, the vast majority of these guys do not have the capability to kill a creature the size of a human. It does not mean I'm going to give him a chance to try. And there are some exceptions to that as well. The best known of those is the boomslang. Boomslings have a very nasty, potent venom. They have been known to cause quite a few human fatalities. Any other questions besides can he go away yet? No? Okay, right there. He couldn't kill a person, no. Right there in the blue? All of our venomous snakes have their fangs. All have their venom. We're going to bring that up a little bit later as well, though. Yep. Will they eat their own kind? They might if they're really hungry. They might try for it. Yeah?
How old can they get?
About the same age as that python, 15 to 20, 25 years. All right. So, and if there's any questions I don't get to, near the end of the show, there's going to be a chance to answer the rest of the questions. Usually a lot more familiar to people. That group is known as the viper. Does anybody want to take a guess at what snake this is besides being a viper? So that's exactly what we have here. This is a cottonmouth, also known as a water moccasin. It's a venomous snake that we're going to find southeastern portions of the United States. It spans anywhere between eastern Texas all the way into Florida. Now they do belong to that group known as the vipers. Like all vipers, he does have incredibly long fangs. But this guy right here, they're just about 1/4 of an inch long. The longest fangs of any venomous snake are in that of the gaboon viper, and those can be just under 2 inches long.
Dang.
Hypothetically, say they were to stick permanently straight forward, you could then see him poking out the bottom of his mouth. That really wouldn't be too safe, not too convenient for the snake. Instead, they do work on a hinge system, kind of like our elbow. When his mouth is closed, when the teeth are not in use, they're simply going to be folded up to the roof of his mouth. Now also, as he goes to open up that mouth, those teeth are going to start to swing forward, and he can open that mouth to an incredibly wide angle. It's almost a full 180 degrees. So because of this, when they go to strike, those teeth can actually stick straight out in front of him. And as I said, they're already on that hypodermic-like system, so all he needs to do to inject his venom is to strike, make any sort of small contact. As soon as that occurs, the venom is released, the process begins. It's actually why we're able to argue the vipers do have the quickest, therefore the most efficient use of their venom. Now also, the strike of a viper is one of the fastest movements in the animal kingdom. In fact, when they do strike at full speed, there are more G-forces being pressed against his face than we do see in that of a pilot flying a fighter plane. And also, people are curious, how exactly did they get that name, the cottonmouth? And I'll see if I can show you guys. You might have had a couple looks at it already, though.
It's white inside.
So on the inside of his mouth is going to be this bright white or a pink coloration. Now when they feel threatened, when they feel like they're going to get harmed or killed, you're actually going to see him open his mouth really wide. It's going to create a natural contrast of color between that bright white and that dark exterior. In nature, this sort of a color contrast is going to serve as a natural warning to all predators that he does have a defense in his venom. Much like that of a skunk being a black and white coloration, of course they have their smell as a defense. And I want to get back to your question over here. We always get asked, do we defang our venomous snakes? Do we milk them at the beginning or the end of the day? Let you guys know that every single venomous snake you're going to see here today, they have their fangs, they have their venom. He can use it at any moment. We found that it was just a lot safer to learn to work with them. But what that means is that accidents can still happen. Now, if something's going to happen to me, I want to make sure that I'm going to be okay. So we actually have anti-venom for every single venomous snake here on grounds. It's located on the opposite side of the grounds from where we are right now. Now, anti-venom, it's also an incredibly expensive product, and because we need so much from so many different snakes, we do buy it all in bulk. And the company we actually get it from, they brag that their product is 100% guaranteed.
Yeah.
Now what they mean by that, they say I'm doing the show here, I get bit by the cottonmouth, we're going to go through the entire process, go to the hospital, get the anti-venom, but let's say hypothetically I still die, the company's then going to replace that anti-venom free of charge. Any questions about the cottonmouth? Right there in the orange, yeah? They have venom. They're a venomous snake. Yep, that's why we're going to use our hook here.
I got one.
Yep.
So in Lonesome Dove, when they all came.
Oh, I'm so happy you asked me about Lonesome Doves. Yeah, so in Lonesome Dove, you guys haven't seen it, spoiler alert. In the river, they're walking across, or riding their horses across, and there's that big ball of cottonmouths, right? And one of the guys falls into it and immediately dies because he's bit like 100 times. It's completely fake. There are some species of snake that you'll actually see do that. None of them are actually venomous. The closest one to here is just southern Manitoba, and the only reason that they do it is for reproduction, and the only reason they do the reproduction that way is because they have such a loss of ecosystem that that's the only way that they can actually do it. Right there? Nope, these guys are going to strike, envenomate it, and just let it die. Now also, venom doesn't just kill that animal, it also starts to digest it before they've even swallowed it. Alright, so we do still have a third group of venomous snake to talk about. If you're curious about such things, that's a good indication that it's a female snake. So anyway, all the times when people do see a cobra, they're also thinking about that snake charmer that plays his flute. You know, it kind of seems like the snake is swaying back and forth to the rhythm of the music. However, like all snakes, they don't actually have any external ears. They're not listening to the music at all. They're simply following the swaying movements of that charmer's body. Now, their strike is going to be different than any other snake. It's not going to be straight out. It's instead going to be from that hooded position. So it's a forward and a downward movement. And because of this, it is relatively slow when we compare it to that of a strike of a rattlesnake or a cottonmouth. In theory, what that means is that an alert person could get within striking distance, allow the snake to strike, and then safely get out of the way. I'm going to be honest with you guys, I don't get paid well enough to try that. On top of that, their venom is incredibly dangerous. It's known to be about 40 times more toxic than the poison cyanide. The quickest reported death ever due to an Asian cobra was just under 10 minutes. Now, it is a very nasty venom, but it actually doesn't come anywhere close to the most venomous snake in the world. That is the inland taipan. The inland taipan venom is about 100 times more toxic than this guy. In one bite of an inland taipan, they have enough venom to kill anywhere between 150 and 200 people. It only takes about 1 milligram of that venom to kill one person. But the inland taipans, they actually live in a very secluded area of the outback. Human contact is incredibly rare. In fact, there's never actually been a reported death due to that snake. And that's why we compare it to the cobra here, because this is the snake that kills more people each year than any other. And there are a couple of reasons for why that actually is. They do live in one of the most densely populated regions, being southeastern Asia, primarily India. It's also going to be very warm, very humid. So a lot of these people, they're also going barefoot or they're going to wear loose clothing. But really the most significant issue is just medical attention not being readily available. You know, there are some areas where it could even be an entire day away. So each and every year, it is estimated that the Asiatic cobra kills anywhere between 15 and 20,000 people. Now that's a very high, very unfortunate number, especially when we compare it to the several hundred venomous snake bites that we have here in the US each year. On average, we're only going to see anywhere between 3 and 5 fatalities, and that really goes to show how quick, how attentive both our medical attention and our anti-venom has become. Alright, now actually I have a question to show as well.
Rattlesnake?
You guys can probably hear him right about now. Guys, what do I have? Exactly, this is a rattlesnake, better known as the prairie rattlesnake. Now rattlesnakes, they do belong to that group known as the viper. We can see he came right out and he was wagging his tail. Means that he's a very happy snake. Speaking of that tail, does anybody know what you can get by counting the segments on his rattle?
8.
Right, you can get bit. So the most common myth is that if you count those segments, you're going to get the age of the snake. Now the issue with that is every single time they shed their skin, they're actually going to grow another segment on top of it. And adult healthy snakes, they can actually shed their skin anywhere between 3-5 times a year. Third, finally, that rattle itself, it's quite fragile. It's actually made from keratin, the same stuff that our fingernails are, so it is just going to break off from time to time. But fortunately, that rattle, it is going to tell us something just a little bit more important. Rattlesnakes are always going to rattle before they strike, unless they strike and then rattle later. There's not actually a correlation between these two movements, and if you think about it, there's no animal in nature that needs permission from their butt. Now we do find snakes, both venomous and non-venomous, that when they're feeling threatened, they will shake their tail back and forth. It's just much more fortunate that he does have a loud indication to go with it. You guys didn't believe, did you? You guys hear that noise? It's a little quiet right now. I'm going to have to replace some batteries. But the noise itself is actually produced when they shake their tail back and forth at a high rate of speed. It's going to be anywhere between 75 and 90 times per second. When they shake that tail, there's actually nothing rattling around. All that's occurring is those hollowed out segments are clicking back and forth off of each other. Now here in South Dakota, as I said, this is the only venomous snake that we do find here, but rarely do we have any issues with them. One of the reasons for that is because we just live in a very natural area. They're more afraid of us than we are of them. They see, they feel us coming along, they're going to try to the best of their ability to hide. But we also should know what to do if we ever have an interaction with one. So say you guys are out, it's a beautiful, warm, sunny day, just like we have here today. You're up on a hiking trail, you're up in the Badlands, up in the Black Hills here. You're walking along and all of a sudden you just hear the rattling noise. What are you going to do?
Run for life.
Normally when I ask this question, people yell things like run, jump, scream, cry, lock and load. A couple years ago, we even had a kid right where you guys are at. He told me stop, drop, and roll. I don't really recommend any of those answers, especially running away, because if you think about it, if you're basing where that snake is on a split second of where that noise is coming from, you might be going right towards it. You might get a little bit too close. You might even step on it. Those sorts of things are not going to end very well. They will lead to very long, very painful days, maybe even a couple of weeks. So if you ever hear that rattling noise, the most important thing you can do is to first stop your movement. Now, as soon as you do that, you got to start to listen up. Just locate where that noise is actually coming from. And once you find it, then take those slow steps in the opposite direction. Really, that is the safest thing you can do. Now, we do have some people out there that they would much rather capture or kill these snakes, and if you would like, by all means, go ahead. You can't blame him for what's about to happen. Each and every year, more venomous snake bites, they do occur when people are trying to mess around with them. And here in the United States, we can get a very accurate number for that because we're looking at the venomous snake bites that are occurring in places like the fingers, the hands, the arms, the neck, the face. A lot of those venomous snake bites, strangely enough, are occurring in males between the ages of 16 and 25. And for another off reason, most of these also include alcohol. So it's important for everyone out there, but especially you guys, if you ever do see a drunk rattlesnake, leave it alone.
Yeah.
And we do like to wrap up our show on a bit of a serious note. You know, we do get some questions. How do I get qualified for these shows? Well, before we can do them, we actually have to go through a very rigorous 3 to 4 minute program. In this, we learn how to handle snakes, how to hook them properly, really how to deal with dangerous scenarios. For example, say that rattlesnake was incredibly upset, striking at me every other second. I was getting a little nervous that I was about to get bit. What you guys are going to see me do is take my snake hook here, hook the snake about halfway down his body, right about there, and in one quick movement, just fling him out that way. A couple reasons for why we do this. First off, I'm not getting bit. Second, we figure we have your money, so it's okay. But that is going to wrap up my show for you guys here, and I will hang out for a couple of minutes if you'd like to come up, get some better pictures of him, ask any other questions about snakes you may have, and I will be doing that gator show in just about 20 minutes, and I hope to see you guys out there. Other than that, you have been a great audience. And like I said, yeah, probably 16 snakes on the bottom. Probably the rattlesnake, right? So the biggest snake in the world is right at about 32 feet long. He was a reticulated python. The only one is on the lower part of the dome. For you guys, these 3 here, right there, and right here are some of those alligators. Hey, buddy. Now we also do have, I don't have anything for you. We also do have crocodiles out here. Now crocodiles are going to be found in warm, tropical regions of the world. The majority of crocodiles in this enclosure are Nile crocodiles. They're going to be found throughout Africa. Now we also do have 3 slender snouted crocodiles, and I'll point them out for you guys as well as 1 saltwater crocodile. But, I hate my job. First off, these guys, right here, right there, here, and here are some of those Nile crocodiles. Another one of them hanging out in the pool right here. With the Nile crocodiles, you may actually notice that there's a little bit of a color variation. Some of these guys are going to be more of a gray, silver color, whereas others are going to have more of a dark yellow or a dark green. It's actually going to tell you where they're from in Africa. The more of the gray or the silver, those are the East African Nile crocodiles. In comparison to those dark green, those are the West African Niles. Now, one of those slender snouted crocodiles is hanging out just in front of you guys there. You can really kind of see how they do get their name. Another slender snouted crocodile is right here. And right next to him is the saltwater crocodile. Now these guys, they're going to have more of a black and a white coloration. You can see that as well with Maniac. And you guys are great to hang out there right on the glass, but can I have you just sit down for me? Just right there, just so everyone else behind you can see. Thank you. Now we also have 1 Caiman out here. Now Caiman are a close relative to the alligator. We're going to find them South Mexico, Central, and also South America. The only Caiman in here is hanging out right here. This is a Yakare Caiman. Easiest way for us to distinguish him are these black lines that'll go down his jaw and then also down his tail. Now do you guys know how to tell the difference between an alligator and a crocodile? Right there?
Alligators have more V-shaped mouth and crocodiles have V-shaped.
So the shape of the head is one of the easiest ways to look at the difference. Alligators, their heads are going to be very broad. You know, it's much more of a square or rectangular shape. In comparison to those crocodiles, as you said, it's much more narrow. It's more of a triangular or an arrowhead shape. The other easy way that you can tell the difference is that the alligators will see you later. The crocodiles will then see you after a while. Now there is still that 4th group of crocodilian known as gharial. They're a very cool, very unique creature. The easiest way for us to describe what they look like is they have a very similar body to one of these Nile crocodiles or one of these slender-snouted crocodiles, but their snouts are going to be a lot longer, a lot more narrow. Male gharials on the end of that snout will then have a fist-sized lump, also used for confrontation. And a lot of what this show is answering the most common questions that people have about these animals. Normally, we're asked quite often, which one of these animals eats people? More specifically, people want to know which one is that true man-eater. Well, every single animal out here is carnivorous. They're going to eat meat. So if given the opportunity, they will eat a person. But they're kind of lazy. They're also not that fussy. They're not going to go too far out of their way just to get a person. In fact, there are some areas where if they can't find anything, they have been known to resort to cannibalism and just eat each other. So when it comes to eating people, it's much more about the opportunity to actually do so. And there are areas of the world where this opportunity will present itself a little bit more often. One of those, for example, will be throughout Africa, where we do see those Nile crocodiles. There are some areas where people have to go down to the water for their daily source, for cleaning and for drinking. That will, of course, give those Nile crocodiles a regular opportunity to prey upon those people. In fact, it's so much so that each and every year the Nile crocodile kills and eats more people on that continent than all of the other animals combined. So really, for the sake of argument, we can say that the Nile crocodile is that true man-eater. Now also, like in that snake show, we like to get to know you guys a little bit. Did anybody come out here today kind of hoping to see me get bit? Okay, it's not a lot of hands, and for the most part I appreciate that. You guys that have your hands up, you are sick people. But everyone was probably excited for the show. You all wanted to see some excitement. You probably wanted to see just a little bit of danger. You know, maybe you're hoping I was going to walk out that door and immediately these animals are chasing me around. They're biting at my heels. Maybe at one point to save my life, I have to dive over the pool and the glass. That's what you guys wanted, right?
Yep.
Perfect. So you then come out here, sit down, you watch me walk out that door. Well, guess what? Yeah, this is what you got. There wasn't a whole lot of excitement. There wasn't a whole lot of movement. You may have been curious, maybe even concerned as to why this was. Really, if so, don't worry. We do get questions about that all the time. We are very commonly asked things like, is that a statue or is he dead? And actually, a couple of years ago, there was even one lady who asked me how often I had to inflate the ones in the water. I can assure you, every single animal that you see is alive. We do need to remember that, like all reptiles, they are cold-blooded. And because of that, they don't actually produce nervous energy. They have no energy to waste. So really what that means is if they have nothing to do, what they will then do is nothing. And they're actually pretty good at doing this. It's going to be the best way for them to hunt as well. Now we're going to see these guys a lot of the times in nature. They're going to be hanging out in rivers and ravines. They have no problem laying in this water for hours on end, waiting for some sort of an animal to come down to that water. Once they see it, they're very quickly going to sink under the water. They're going to very stealthily swim over and get to a point where they then can lunge out and grab onto it, hopefully faster than Albert's demonstrating right now. If this animal is small enough, they will go ahead and swallow it whole. If it's a little bit larger though, you're going to see them have to grab it. They're going to drag it back into the water. At this point, they will perform a death roll, drown that animal, have the ability then to dismember and eat it at their own leisure. Now the same sort of concept is actually going to be applied like this on land. They're going to lay motionless, just like we see this Nile crocodile right here. Basically what he's doing is waiting for something like a bird, a squirrel, a dumb show person to get a little bit too close to those jaws. At that point, what's then going to happen is the Nile crocodile will swing his head to the side. Swing his head to the side at lightning speed so fast that no one's going to actually see it. Grab that food, and that same sort of process will ensue from right there. Now, and also one of these arguments that people make out here is they have to be fake, they have to be statues. I've been watching this crocodile for 15 minutes just lay there with his mouth open. That's actually for temperature regulation. When they hold their mouth open like that, they're either heating themselves up, their internal temperature, or they're cooling it down. They have the ability to do either. Now, the next portion of this show is going to be a lot more hands-on. I'm actually going to show you guys some of the handling techniques that we're taught to work with these guys so we're not going to get hurt or they're not going to get hurt. It is called Alligator Wrestling, and you guys want to see that, right?
Oh yeah.
Alright, I like that extra enthusiasm. So much so, I like you guys. I want you to actually help me out with this. And help me pick an alligator. Don't let me down. Would you like a nice or a mean alligator? Mean! See, it's not what I wanted to hear. Alright, do you guys want this mean alligator to be small or big? Big! A lot of you just went 0 for 2. So I heard somebody over there a couple of times suggest that I wrestle Fat Albert. Now I want to thank you for looking at me and thinking I can lift upwards of 400 pounds. That makes me feel really good about myself today. But unfortunately, Albert's just a little bit too big. Really, it's tricky to get him up on land, so we'll go with somebody just a little bit smaller. But also to that, we do get some questions. Why am I not going to wrestle a crocodile? Now actually, the techniques that you'll see me use are the exact same that we use on the crocodiles, but they're a little bit quicker. They're also a little bit more flexible. They can actually reach the tip of their own tail. So when we work with them out here, we actually need 2 to 3 people. And since I'm by myself, and I like the use of things like my fingers, my hands, my face, we are just going to stick to the alligators. But like I said, we'll see what we can find here. Now it's also very important, and oftentimes you're going to see me stick my hand in the water. When I do this, I have to make sure that I am grabbing the non-toothy end. So let's see here. Okay. You guys see a little splash? It's just Gatorade. I think I actually found an alligator though. Let's see if I can chase him back into the water.
Get us some chicken, man.
Come on, let's move.
So we'll see how they're going to come out.
Let's go with this guy here. So you guys might be able to hear a hissing noise from where you're at. It loosely translates to the phrase, "I love you." Okay, so we did find our volunteer. If you didn't know it, this is actually how you guys walk an alligator. Now it is polite. You see that I got him up on land here. We do kind of want to give him a moment to kind of catch his breath. Now in just a second, you're going to see me jump on his back. Now when I jump, it's more of a targeted landing. None of my weight's actually going to be on him. It's going to be on my knees. It's also going to be on my hands, on his neck. Now with knees in his armpits, hands on his neck, that's called the safety zone. I'm not going to get bit while I'm sitting there. It's important to me. But before I jump, there's a couple of things we actually have to watch out for. First is the placement of his head. They can only see things that are above him and directly to the side of him. He cannot see anything right in front of him, more importantly, right behind him. So if I jump with that head straight forward, he's not going to see me, not going to meet me halfway with that kiss. Now it's also important that when I do jump, as I said, knees in his armpits, hands on his neck, I cannot overshoot that target area. So I do like where that head's located right now. You're going to see me tug on his tail and quickly jump just like that. And then from here, it's yeehaw. You might also notice I jumped on, he started to fight a little bit. I'm just going to come up here and close his eyes. It seems to relax him. We're not entirely sure why it works though. There are several theories to this. My personal favorite theory is that when you cover up their eyes, they can't see anything. He thinks he's dead. I don't absolutely believe this, but we do need to remember that his brain is twice as big as mine is. It's actually how I got this job. If he's smaller at all, I would be management. But anyway, while we're here, before we go any further with the actual handling, we do like to take a minute and point out some of the characteristics that make these guys so cool, such a unique animal, and I always like to start that on the inside of his mouth. Now if you guys want to take a quick peek, he's not going to give us a great look at all. Notice with his mouth open, with any of their mouths open, you can't actually see down their throat. And that's because of their tongue. Their tongue's actually going to seal off at the back of his throat. It's going to allow him to open his mouth underwater without taking any into his gut. So it's incredibly rare to see down his throat. There's only a handful of times this will ever happen, such as him yawning or you being eaten. Now also on this discussion of valves, on the top of his mouth right here are his nostrils. Behind his eyes, these two flaps are his ears. Both of those are going to be very similar. They're going to seal off underwater, making them completely airtight for that aquatic life. In fact, they can lay with just those eyes above the surface for hours on end. It's going to be a great hunting, a great stalking adaptation. What it's not going to be is a great confrontational ability, because of where they're located, if they're going to get in the way, they will get injured, placed on the top of his head like that. Instead, if they have the opportunity, what you're going to see them do is very quickly retract their eyes back into their skull. It'll then be protected by that heavy bony ridge. Nothing can hurt him at that point. And also when his eyes open back up again, they kind of look like they're rolling backwards. It's actually a secondary eyelid. It's very thin. It's known as the nictitating membrane. It's basically a built-in pair of diving goggles. It is going to allow him to see better while underwater. Now also looking at these guys, they have very short stubby legs, comparatively heavy head, belly, and tail. You might be thinking to yourself that he cannot run very fast, but actually at short distances, he could outrun any one of us. And in the water, it's not going to be any sort of a contest. They have front and back webbed feet as well as a large heavy tail, and really can help him push right through that water. Larger gators have been known to reach speeds well over 10 miles an hour. We're going to go back to these jaws here because there's an incredible amount of closing force right there. In comparison, relatively no opening force, and I'll show you what I mean. It's not that hard for me to grab these jaws and simply force it shut just like this. You know, I'm not having to relinquish a whole lot of force to close those jaws. It's not the issue when it comes to that portion. The issue is because they live in the water, they're going to be wet. They may have an algae buildup. And if I go to grab those jaws and I'm not really paying attention, I don't have a good handle, it's not going to take too much for him then to shake his head back and forth, me to lose my grip and have my hands in a spot he can then chomp onto. So it's very important that when we close their jaws, it's a nice tight grip. And then from there, you're just going to slide your hands to the top and then rock back until you feel just a little bit of resistance. This does not hurt them at all. All it does is limit his movement even further. While sitting like this, he cannot try the death roll, and that's a giant benefit to us. Because if he goes to roll while I'm on his back, only bad things are going to happen. For example, he could start that roll. He could then end on his side. From there, have a clear shot at my belly, my chest, my face. It's not going to feel good. Even worse, however, is he goes to roll, and I get my legs tangled up with his legs or his big heavy tail. The next thing I know, we're going to go for a little bit of a spin. I'm going to end up on the turf. He's then going to be on my back, and the show is about him properly shutting my mouth. Now on a serious note, this demonstration right here is the exact same way that we do it to get in here to check their health. From this point, another trainer will then come around front, check any sort of injuries that we need checked. If we need to move them, we can then tape their jaws shut and move them to wherever they need to go. Now the most important part about alligator wrestling is knowing how you jump off without getting bit. Really all you're going to want to do is close his eyes, you press his head into the ground just like this. You just kind of want to make sure that none of his friends are back there waiting for you. And then you quickly jump just like that. So that really is the basic way to go about wrestling an alligator. Now also, you might have noticed as that portion was going on, we had a little bit of activity in the water. They're going to start to line up like they are now. This is called the buffet line. It means that it's almost time for the feeding portion. So in the back there, I do have some cut up pieces of food. Before I go to grab that, I want to point out something about their teeth. We'll see if our volunteer will be so kind. Now the shape of those teeth right there are conical. They're round and pointed. With a tooth of that nature, if something's too large for him to swallow whole, he cannot simply take bites out of it like you or I could. Instead, what they have to do is grab that food, shake their head back and forth, ripping and tearing away small pieces. And that can become quite a violent action because they can become quite careless. Not worry if they instead get their buddy's foot or tail stuck in their mouth. So when we feed them out here, It's always going to be small, bite-sized pieces of food. And honestly, this right here probably is my favorite part of the show. It's really cool, really fun. I get to do this job 2 to 3 times in a day. But like a lot of the things we do out here, there are going to be some risks involved. So for example, say that I walk out here, simply throw down the food. It's not going to take too long for these animals to start to associate me with food. It's not going to take much longer after that until I actually, am their food. So to avoid this, we have started to train them through both a visual and a sound signal. The visual signal is me holding this green bucket. The sound signal is me hitting bucket with stick. When they hear this noise, it's going to work like a dinner bell. They'll know that dinner is served. And as you can see, we are getting a little bit more excitement. And hopefully as soon as I hit this bucket, it's going to double, if not triple that. Here we go. So much excitement. We are feeding out small bite-sized pieces of chicken, as I said, very basic. You can find it at your local grocery store. I think it's Tyson today. Now he's gonna grab that food, and it's really important we toss that food down, that they see it within their line of sight. Once it goes below that, they then have to rely on their sense of hearing to hear where it hits the ground, shake their head back and forth to actually find it. They are also gonna see they have to shake their heads back and forth to grab that food. The reason for that is they have very short necks, really long faces, heavy heads. They don't have the ability to simply stick out that face and grab food like you or I do. It's right here. So you're gonna see he's gonna grab that food as well, make that chewing motion. Now the chew's not in the sense that you or I may know it. Basically what they're doing is they're better placing that food in their mouth to then swallow whole. Now I say swallow whole because that is going to include heavier objects such as chicken bones here. They have high levels of acid in their stomach that'll be used for the digestion of those things. Now it is going to take a little bit of time, but that's actually to their advantage as well. They will use that added weight, sort of like buoyancy. It's going to allow them to lay flat, while they're in the water. All right. Okay. One more try. Throwing ducks like Aaron Rodgers out here. Also, probably got a good look. That alligator just completely disregarded that chicken. That's a good sign that they are after the other white meat. Where'd that piece go now? I'll come back for it. I do like to toss a few pieces underwater as well. We'll do that in just a second here. Okay. Sooner than I would have liked. Thank you to that one person that warned me about the animal behind me. Appreciate that. Come on. Get the chicken. There. Fine, here. Like I said, they do have to rely on that sense of hearing for them as well. Let's get back over here though. I'm going to toss some of those pieces underwater. We'll feed Albert here. Now Albert's going to grab that food and right away, he's going to have to bring his head up at about a 45-degree angle. They have to do that because of that valve in the back of their throat. They cannot swallow while their head is underwater. So as we see right there, and we'll show once again with this guy there, he's going to find that chicken. He will find that chicken. Bring his head to the surface about that 45-degree angle, and then that process can begin. Now you're also going to notice I'm only feeding out about 10 pieces of chicken. It's not going to be enough, obviously, to feed every single animal. In an entire day, I'm not sure we're going to feed every single one of these guys, because it really doesn't matter. They are cold-blooded animals. They have rather slow metabolisms. They're not going to be hungry as often as you or I may be. In fact, it's not that uncommon for them to go days, weeks, sometimes even a full month in between substantial meals. And to that as well, there's actually a group of Nile Crocodiles. They live in Africa. They're only going to have substantial meals once every year. So if one of these guys are not going to be fed at one show, really not that big of a deal for them to wait a couple of hours until their next opportunity. Come here. like I said, just a couple more pieces here, and we'll toss out. Or if that crocodile over there is hungry. Yeah, I know you are. You hungry? Whatever.
He wants the fried chicken, man.
Come on. Okay. All right, so that was the last piece of food that I had. What I'm going to do now, though, is I am going to run back. I'm going to wash off my hands. And I do actually have just one more surprise for you guys. So if you want to hang tight, I'll be right back for you. His name is Fluffy. Now, when alligators are born, they're right at about 7 inches long. For the first 4 to 5 years of his life, we're actually going to see him grow about a foot every year. And then after that, it's going to slow down. It's only going to be about a ½ inch to 1 inch each year, but they're going to grow at that rate for a majority of their lives. Now, they can live anywhere between 65 and 75 years. Now, Fluffy, he's not going to be out in this enclosure until he's right at about 10 years old, because at that age, that size, we feel that he is big enough to take care of himself. However, even at 2 years old, he does have sharp teeth and a nasty little bite. So around back, I do have some tape. And in just a second, what I'll do for you guys is tape his jaws shut and then start working my way through the bleachers right here. If you guys want to come up, pet Fluffy, or ask any other questions you may have. Now, the next show in the rotation is going to be that bird show. Unfortunately, I'm not going to do it because birds are scary. Make sure you guys check it out anyway. And other than that, you have been a great audience. Thanks for stopping out. Have a great rest of your afternoon at Reptile Gardens.
Well, lizard like any other.
Hey, we're gonna go over here by Daddy.
Yeah.